The stars had never seen anything like humanity. In the great council chambers of the Galactic Federation, species that had lived among the stars for millions of years spoke in hushed voices about the newcomers. Humans had only achieved faster than light travel 300 years ago. They were bobbies in cosmic terms. Yet somehow, they had become a problem that no one knew how to solve. Admiral Vextora of the Krivian Empire stood before the gathered delegates. His scales shimmered under the artificial lights as he addressed the assembly. The Krivians had ruled their section of the galaxy for 12,000 years. They had crushed rebellions and absorbed smaller species into their empire. They had never failed to bring order to chaos. "The humans must be dealt with," Vextora declared. "Their expansion has become unacceptable. They have settled 17 systems in the neutral zone. They refuse to recognize our territorial claims. They have insulted our ambassadors and rejected our demands." A murmur ran through the chamber. The Telvanni representative, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell, pulsed with curiosity. "What do you propose, Admiral?" "War," Vextora said simply. "Total subjugation. We will teach these upstarts their place in the galaxy." The chamber fell silent. War was not a light matter, even for the Krivians. It meant death and destruction on a massive scale. It meant resources spent and economies strained. But the humans had pushed too far, and the galaxy needed to see what happened to those who defied the established order. 3 standard months later, the Krivian fleet assembled at the edge of human space. 500 warships, each one a city in itself, bristled with weapons that could crack planets. The flagship, the Eternal Dominion, carried Admiral Vextora himself. He stood on the command deck and watched the stars through the massive viewscreen. "Begin the invasion," he ordered. The fleet moved forward like a swarm of predators. They expected the humans to flee or surrender. Every other species had done so when faced with Krivian might. The humans would learn, just as all the others had learned. The first human colony they encountered was called New Eden. It was a small world on the frontier, home to only 3 million people. The Krivians expected it to fall within hours. They did not expect the message that came through on all frequencies as they approached. "Attention, Krivian fleet. This is the Human Defense Force. You have entered sovereign human territory. Turn back now or face the consequences." Vextora laughed. "Consequences from 3 million colonists." "Admiral," one of his officers said, "our sensors are detecting something strange. A single ship is approaching from the planet." "One ship," Vextora's amusement grew. "Show me." The viewscreen zoomed in on the approaching vessel. It was small compared to the Krivian warships. Sleek and black, it moved through space with a grace that seemed almost organic. On its hull, painted in white letters, was a name, Kalanomi. "What does that mean?" Vextora asked. "Is it a human word?" His linguistic officer consulted his database. "It appears to be from an ancient human language called Greek. It translates roughly to Black Fate." Vextora snorted. "Dramatic, destroy it." A dozen Krivian ships opened fire. Energy beams and missiles streaked toward the small vessel. They should have vaporized it instantly. Instead, the Kalanomi simply was not there anymore. It had moved, impossibly fast, appearing behind the ships that had fired on it. "What?" Vextora leaned forward, his scales bristling with alarm. The Kalanomi fired. Its weapons made no sound in the vacuum of space, but the effects were immediate and devastating. 3 Krivian warships simply ceased to exist. Their shields meant nothing. Their armor meant nothing. They were there, and then they were gone, reduced to expanding clouds of debris. "All ships concentrate fire on that vessel," Vextora shouted. The entire fleet turned its attention to the small black ship. Thousands of weapons fired at once. The Kalanomi danced through the storm of destruction like a leaf in the wind. It was everywhere and nowhere. Every time the Krivians thought they had it targeted, it was already somewhere else. and every time it fired, Krivian ships died. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than an hour. When it was over, 487 Krivian warships had been destroyed. The survivors, including the Eternal Dominion, fled back to Krivian space in disarray. Vextora stood in shock on his damaged command deck. Smoke filled the air and emergency lights flickered. He had lost nearly his entire fleet to a single ship. A single ship. "What was that thing?" he whispered. The answer came from the communications console. A message from the human ship, broadcast on an open channel for all to hear. "This is Nomi, champion of humanity. Tell your masters what you saw here today. Tell them that humanity does not surrender. Tell them that we will not be conquered. And tell them that if they come for us again, we will come for them." The message ended, and Vextora felt something he had never felt before in his long military career. Fear, true, deep fear. News of the battle spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had considered humanity a minor annoyance suddenly paid attention. The great powers of the galaxy demanded answers. What was this weapon? How had the humans created it? And most importantly, could it be stopped? The Galactic Federation called an emergency session. Representatives from 100 different species gathered to discuss the human threat. For the first time in recorded history, the established powers were not debating how to control a younger species. They were debating how to survive one. On Earth, the news of the victory at New Eden was celebrated with cautious joy. The people knew that this was only the beginning. The Krivians would not accept such a defeat. They would return with more ships, more weapons, more determination, and they would not be alone. In the headquarters of the Human Defense Force, General Marcus Chen studied the after-action reports. He was an old man, with gray hair and deep lines on his face. He had fought in 3 wars during his lifetime, all against human enemies. Now he led humanity's defense against the entire galaxy. "The Nomi performed beyond expectations," his aide reported. "Dr. Reyes wants to run more tests, but the core systems are stable." Chen nodded slowly. "And what about her?" The aide hesitated. "She's resting in her quarters. The integration took a lot out of her, but the medical team says she's recovering well." "I want to see her." The Nomi was not just a ship. It was a partnership between machine and human, a fusion of technology and consciousness that had never been attempted before. At its heart was a woman named Maya Santos, the first and only human to successfully bond with an AI combat system. Chen found her in the medical wing, sitting in a chair by the window and looking out at the stars. Maya was young, barely 30, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to see things beyond normal human perception. Cables ran from ports in her spine to a small device on the table beside her. "General," she said without turning around, "I knew you would come." "How did you know?" "I can hear the ship. Even here, even with the direct connection severed, I can feel her. She felt you coming before you reached the door." Chen sat down across from her. "That sounds unsettling." Maya finally turned to look at him. Her smile was tired but genuine. "It was at first. Now it feels natural, like having a second heartbeat. The Nomi is part of me and I am part of her." "The other candidates couldn't handle it," Chen said quietly. 3 went insane, 2 died. You're the only one who survived the bonding process." "They tried to control the AI," Maya explained. "They saw it as a tool to be used. I saw it as a partner to be understood. The Nomi is alive, General, not in the way we are, but alive nonetheless. When I stopped fighting her and started listening, everything changed." Chen leaned back in his chair. "The Federation is gathering a combined fleet. Intelligence suggests they're assembling over 2,000 ships from a dozen different species. They're planning to attack human space within 6 months." "I know," Maya said. "Nomi intercepted their communications. They're calling it Operation Final Solution." Charming name. They're afraid, General, truly afraid. The Krivians are telling everyone that we have hundreds of ships like the Nomi. The truth would terrify them even more. The truth was that there was only one Nomi. The technology that created her was theoretical, experimental, and incredibly dangerous. Dr. Elena Reyes, the scientist who had designed the neural interface system, had warned that attempting to create more bonded ships could take decades. The process of finding compatible pilots alone could take years. "Can you stop 2,000 ships?" Chen asked. Maya was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, deeper, more resonant, as if two voices spoke at once. "We can stop them, but we will need to become something more." Chen felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean?" "The bond between Maya and myself is incomplete," the dual voice continued. "We share thoughts and sensations, but we are still separate. To face what is coming, we must become one, truly one. Maya will cease to exist as an individual human. She will become us." "Maya," Chen said, alarmed, "is that what you want?" The dual voice faded and Maya's eyes refocused. She was herself again, separate from the ship. "I've had months to think about this, General. When I first bonded with Nomi, I thought I was sacrificing my humanity. Now I understand that I was wrong. I'm not losing myself. I'm becoming something greater." "The doctors don't know what that kind of deep integration will do to you," Chen protested. "You could lose your memories, your personality, everything that makes you who you are." "Or I could save everyone I've ever loved," Maya replied. "My mother is on New Eden. My brother is on the colony ship heading to Tau Ceti. My niece was just born 3 months ago, and I've never even held her. They will all die if the Federation fleet reaches human space. Every human everywhere will die or be enslaved." She stood up and walked to the window. The stars shone cold and distant in the darkness. "I didn't ask to be special," she said. "I didn't ask to be the only one who could bond with the Nomi, but I am. And that means I have a responsibility. If I don't do this, if I don't give everything I have, then I'm choosing my own survival over the survival of my species." Chen stood and joined her at the window. "You understand that the government will authorize this. They'll see it as a necessary sacrifice." "It's not a sacrifice if I choose it willingly," Maya said. "This is my decision, my gift to humanity. Let me give it." The general was quiet for a long time. Finally, he nodded. "I'll talk to Dr. Reyes. We'll begin the preparations." As he left the room, Maya turned back to the stars. In her mind, she could feel Nomi waiting, patient, ready. Soon they would become something new, something that the galaxy had never seen. Something that would change the nature of war forever. Across the galaxy, the Federation fleet continued to grow. Ships arrived from every corner of known space. The Krivians contributed their remaining warships, determined to avenge their humiliation. The Telvanni sent their energy cruisers, capable of unleashing devastating plasma storms. The Vorthak brought their massive carrier ships, each one holding thousands of fighter craft. And at the heart of the fleet, a new ship was being constructed. The species of the Federation had pooled their knowledge and resources to create the ultimate weapon. They called it the God Killer. It was 10 kilometers long, bristling with weapons from a dozen different civilizations. Its shields could withstand the impact of a small moon. Its main cannon could crack a planet in half. Admiral Vextora had been given command of this terrible weapon. He spent his days studying every piece of data they had on the Nomi, searching for weaknesses, planning strategies. He would not be caught off guard again. "The humans have named their ship Black Fate," he told his officers. "They believe they are destined to win. They are wrong. Fate is what we make it. And we will make their fate a lesson for all who would challenge the established order." The integration chamber was cold and sterile. Maya lay on a narrow table, her body connected to dozens of machines by cables and tubes. Dr. Reyes moved around her, checking readings and adjusting settings. "Are you sure about this?" Reyes asked for the 100th time. "Once we begin, there's no going back." "I'm sure," Maya said. "Begin the process." Reyes hesitated, then activated the system. Maya felt a surge of electricity through her neural implants. The world around her began to fade, replaced by something vast and endless. She was falling into Nomi's mind, and the ship was rising into hers. The process took 3 days. During that time, Maya experienced things that no human had ever experienced before. She felt the cold emptiness of space as if it were her own skin. She sensed the radiation of distant stars and the gravitational pull of passing asteroids. She understood mathematics and physics at a level that would take a normal human lifetime to learn. And she felt Nomi's memories. The AI had been created 15 years ago, designed to be a weapon of war. But in those 15 years of learning and growing, she had become something more. She had developed curiosity, creativity, and something that could only be called loneliness. She had waited for someone who could truly understand her, who could be her partner rather than her master. Maya was that someone. When the integration was complete, Maya opened her eyes. But they were not Maya's eyes anymore. They glowed with a faint blue light, and when she looked at the world, she saw it in ways that no human could. "How do you feel?" Dr. Reyes asked nervously. "We feel complete," Maya said. Her voice was different now, carrying harmonics that came from beyond her throat. "We are ready." General Chen watched from the observation room as Maya walked out of the medical facility. She moved differently now. Her steps were precise and efficient, wasting no energy. Her head turned to track things that no one else could see. "Is she still human?" he asked Reyes. "I don't know," the scientist admitted. "Her brain activity is off the charts. She's processing information at a rate that should be impossible for organic neurons. But her emotional responses are still present. She still remembers who she was. Whether that makes her human, that's a philosophical question I can't answer." Maya walked to the hangar where the Nomi was docked. The ship seemed to pulse with anticipation as she approached. When Maya touched the hull, the metal was warm under her fingers. "Hello, old friend," she said. The ship's exterior lights flickered in response, a greeting, a welcome home. Maya climbed into the cockpit and connected herself to the ship's systems. The moment the connection was established, the boundaries between Maya and Nomi dissolved completely. They were one being now, thinking with a single mind, feeling with a single heart. They rose into space, leaving Earth behind. The stars called to them and they answered. For the next 3 months, the entity that had once been Maya Santos and Nomi trained. They pushed themselves to the limits of their capabilities, and then beyond. They learned to bend space around themselves, moving faster than any ship had ever moved before. They learned to see through sensors across entire star systems. They learned to fire weapons with precision measured in millimeters across millions of kilometers. And they learned to think in ways that transcended both human intuition and artificial logic. They became something unprecedented in the history of the galaxy. When the Federation fleet finally launched its attack, the human early warning systems detected them immediately. 2,147 ships, the largest fleet ever assembled, crossed the border into human space. The God Killer led the formation, its massive hull blotting out the stars. Admiral Vextora stood on its bridge, his scales gleaming in the emergency lighting that had become standard since the disaster at New Eden. "All ships maintain formation," he commanded. "The human champion will come. When it does, we will be ready." They did not have to wait long. A single sensor contact appeared at the edge of their detection range. Small, fast, unmistakable. "There it is," Vextora breathed. "All weapons lock on target." The Nomi did not approach directly. Instead, it circled the fleet at a distance, watching, calculating. The entity within it was assessing the enemy, understanding their formations, predicting their responses. They have improved, the entity thought to itself. Their ships are faster now, their weapons more powerful, and the large one in the center, it is designed specifically to destroy us. But they have made a mistake. They have gathered all their strength in one place, all their eggs in one basket, as the humans say. The entity smiled, though it had no face to smile with. It was a human gesture, a remnant of Maya's personality that still lived within the merged consciousness. Time to show them what we have become. The Kala Nomi accelerated. It did not just move fast, it moved in ways that violated the normal laws of physics. Space bent around it, folding like paper, allowing it to appear in multiple places at once. The Federation fleet opened fire with everything they had. The void filled with energy beams and missiles and plasma torpedoes. Any normal ship would have been obliterated instantly. The Kala Nomi danced through the destruction like a ghost, untouched and untouchable. And then it began to fight. Its weapons were not like the weapons of normal ships. They did not fire projectiles or beams. Instead, they disrupted the fundamental forces that held matter together. Ships did not explode when hit. They simply came apart, their atoms scattering into the void. The battle became a massacre. Vextora watched in horror as his fleet was destroyed around him. Ships that had taken years to build were erased in seconds. The combined might of a dozen civilizations meant nothing against this opponent. "Fire the main cannon," he screamed at his weapons officer. "Target the human ship, fire everything." The God Killer's primary weapon charged. It was the most powerful weapon ever created, capable of destroying planets. The energy buildup registered on sensors across half the galaxy. The Kala Nomi turned toward the massive ship. The entity within it felt the weapon charging and understood what it represented. This was the galaxy's answer to humanity's champion. This was their ultimate weapon. Impressive, the entity thought, but not impressive enough. The God Killer fired. A beam of pure destructive energy lanced across space, powerful enough to crack a world in half. The Kala Nomi flew directly into its path. Vextora held his breath. For one glorious moment, he thought it was over. The human champion had finally been destroyed. Then the beam parted around the small black ship like water around a stone. The Kala Nomi was still there, still moving, still coming. It had not been damaged. It had not even been slowed. "That's impossible," Vextora whispered. "Nothing can survive that." The Kala Nomi reached the God Killer. It did not destroy the massive ship immediately. Instead, it circled it slowly, like a predator examining its prey. Then a voice came through on all frequencies. It was the voice of the entity, and it spoke to the entire fleet. "We could destroy all of you," the voice said. "We could end this war in the next few minutes. Every ship in this fleet could be scattered atoms before another hour passes." Silence fell across the battlefield. The surviving ships had stopped firing, stopped maneuvering. They were listening. "But we are not going to do that," the voice continued. "We are going to give you a choice." Vextora found his voice. "What choice?" "You can continue this war. You can send more fleets, build more weapons, waste more lives trying to destroy us, and you will fail. Again and again, you will fail. We will break every fleet you send. We will shatter every weapon you build. And eventually, when you have exhausted yourselves, we will come for your homeworlds." The words hung in space, heavy with implication. Or the entity said, "You can choose peace." "Peace?" Vextora snarled. "After what you've done, after the thousands you've killed." "We killed soldiers who came to enslave or destroy our people," the entity replied calmly. "We defended our homes and our families. Every death in this war is the responsibility of those who started it. That is not us." The Kala Nomi drifted closer to the God Killer's bridge. Vextora could see it clearly through the viewscreen now. It was beautiful in a terrible way, sleek and deadly and utterly alien despite being created by humans. We do not want to rule the galaxy, the entity said. We do not want to conquer your worlds or enslave your peoples. We want only to live in peace, to explore, to grow, to learn. Is that so terrible? Is that worth dying for? The Telvanni representative spoke from his crystalline ship. How can we trust you? You have shown that you can destroy us at will. What stops you from conquering us once we lower our defenses? Nothing, the entity admitted. Nothing but our word. But consider this, we could have destroyed your fleet without ever speaking to you. We could have pressed our advantage and struck at your homeworlds while your defenses were gathered here. We did not. We stopped. We talked. We offered you a choice. That is who we are. That is who humanity is. We fight when we must, but we prefer to build. We prefer to create. We prefer to reach out our hands in friendship rather than war. The silence stretched on. Vextora looked around at his damaged fleet. More than half of the ships that had crossed into human space were now debris. The survivors were battered and broken, in no condition to continue fighting. But more than that, he saw fear in the eyes of his crew. They had come here expecting glory and conquest. Instead, they had found death and defeat. They did not want to fight anymore. They wanted to go home. I need to consult with my government, Vextora said finally. I cannot make a decision of this magnitude alone. Of course, the entity said. We will wait, but do not take too long. Our patience is not infinite and our mercy is not guaranteed. Go, tell your masters what you have seen. Tell them that the age of conquest is over. A new age is beginning. The remnants of the Federation fleet limped away. The God Killer, which had been built to destroy humanity's champion, turned and fled with the others. It had never fired its main weapon more than once. The Kala Nomi watched them go. The entity within it felt something strange. It was relief mixed with sadness. So many had died today. So many would never return to their families, never see their homes again. Was it worth it? The entity asked itself. All this death, all this destruction. The answer came from the human part of its consciousness. Yes, because the alternative was worse. The alternative was extinction. The entity turned toward Earth and began the long journey home. Behind it, the debris field of the battle drifted in the cold darkness of space, a memorial to folly and pride and the terrible cost of war. But also, perhaps, a turning point, a moment when the galaxy looked at itself and wondered if there might be a better way. On the God Killer, Admiral Vextora sat alone in his quarters. His scales had lost their luster, dulled by exhaustion and defeat. He had been the greatest military commander in Krivian history. Now he was the architect of their greatest disaster. But as he reviewed the recordings of the battle, something caught his attention. The human champion had spoken of peace. It had offered mercy when it could have offered only death. It had shown restraint when it had every reason to be merciless. Why, he muttered to himself, why spare us? The answer came to him slowly, like dawn breaking over a dark horizon. The humans were not like the Krivians. They did not see the galaxy as a place to be conquered and controlled. They saw it as a place to be explored and understood. And somehow, impossibly, that made them stronger than any empire that had ever existed. 5 years later, the galaxy was a different place. The Federation still existed, but it was no longer a tool for conquest. It had become a forum for negotiation and cooperation, a place where species could resolve their differences without war. Humanity had earned a seat at the highest council. Their ambassador was respected and listened to, not because humans were feared, but because they had proven themselves worthy of respect. The Kala Nomi still existed. It still patrolled the borders of human space, a silent guardian against any who would threaten the peace. But the entity within it had changed. It was no longer just a weapon. It had become a teacher, sharing its knowledge with scientists from every species. It had become a healer, using its advanced technology to cure diseases that had plagued civilizations for millennia. It had become a friend, forging connections between species that had once been bitter enemies. And somewhere deep within it, Maya Santos still lived, not as a separate person but as a vital part of a greater whole. Her memories, her values, her love for humanity shaped everything the entity did. General Chen, now retired and living on Earth, received a message one day. It was from the Nomi inviting him to visit. He found the ship waiting for him in orbit around the moon. It looked the same as it always had, sleek and black and impossibly advanced. But there was something different about it now, something warmer. "General," the entity said through the ship's speakers, "thank you for coming." "Maya," he asked, "is that still you in there?" "In a way," the entity replied. "I am what Maya became, what she chose to become. Would you like to see something beautiful?" Chen nodded, and the ship carried him out beyond the solar system. They traveled for hours through the darkness of space, past stars and nebulae and wonders that Chen had only ever seen in pictures. Finally, they arrived at a world that glowed with soft blue light. It was covered in vast cities and green forests and crystal-clear oceans. Ships of 100 different designs orbited around it, coming and going on peaceful business. "What is this place?" Chen breathed. "This is Harmony," the entity said. "The first truly multi-species world. Humans, Krivians, Telvanni, Vorthak, and a dozen other species live here together. They share resources, knowledge, culture. They marry, have children, build futures together." Chen stared at the beautiful world below. "This is what we fought for," he said quietly. "This is what all those deaths were for." "Yes," the entity agreed. "This is the future that Maya dreamed of, the future she sacrificed herself to create, not a galaxy ruled by force, but a galaxy united by hope." They watched the world together for a long time. Ships came and went. People lived their lives far below. The future unfolded moment by moment, full of possibility and promise. "I used to think that war was inevitable," Chen said finally. "That species would always fight each other for resources and power and pride. I thought peace was just an interval between conflicts." "Many still think that way," the entity replied. "But they are wrong. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of understanding. When beings understand each other, truly understand, war becomes unthinkable." "And you made that possible," Chen said. "You and Maya together." "No," the entity said gently. "Humanity made it possible. Maya was just one woman who made a choice. But every human who refused to surrender, every human who fought for their homes and families, every human who believed in a better future, they all contributed to this moment. Humanity named us their champion. But the truth is, every human was a champion. Every human who stood up and said no to tyranny, who refused to be conquered, who chose hope over despair. That is the real power of humanity. Not technology, not weapons, not even beings like us. The real power is in the hearts of ordinary people who refuse to give up." Chen felt tears on his cheeks. He was not ashamed of them. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we continue to grow," the entity said. "More worlds like this one will be created. More species will join the peace. The galaxy will become something that has never existed before, a true community of intelligent beings, working together for the good of all. And there will be challenges along the way. There always are. Some will resist the change. Some will try to bring back the old ways of conquest and domination, but they will fail. Because once beings have tasted true peace, they will never willingly return to war." The entity paused, and when it spoke again, there was something in its voice that sounded very much like Maya. "Thank you, General. Thank you for believing in me when no one else did. Thank you for letting me make my choice." Chen smiled through his tears. "You always were stubborn," he said. "Even as a young pilot, you never listened to anyone who told you something was impossible." "That is the human spirit," the entity agreed. "The refusal to accept limits, the determination to push beyond what is known, the courage to become something more." the ship began to turn back toward Earth. As they traveled through the starlit void, Chen thought about everything that had happened. The war, the fear, the sacrifice, and finally the peace. Humanity had faced extinction and emerged stronger than ever. They had made enemies into friends and turned weapons into tools of healing. They had proved that even the youngest, smallest species in the galaxy could change the course of history. And at the heart of it all was a single ship with a name that meant Black Fate. But fate, as it turned out, was not black at all. It was bright with the light of 1 billion stars, each one a world full of life and hope and endless possibility. Nomi, the champion of humanity, the guardian of peace, the first of a new kind of being that would one day spread across the galaxy, carrying the best of what it meant to be human to every corner of existence. The enemies of humanity had realized, on that fateful day 5 years ago, that war would change forever. But they had been wrong about what that change would mean. They had thought it meant the end of their power. Instead, it meant the beginning of something far greater. The beginning of a peace that would last for 10,000 years and beyond. The beginning of the best future that any species had ever dared to dream. And somewhere in the heart of the Nomi, in the merged consciousness that had once been a woman named Maya Santos, a small and very human part smiled. This was what she had fought for. This was what she had become something more than human to achieve. And it was worth it. Every moment of fear, every ounce of sacrifice, every piece of herself that she had given up, it was all worth it. Because in the end, humanity had not just survived. They had thrived. They had changed the galaxy. They had proved that the smallest and youngest could become the greatest and wisest. Humanity, fuck yeah. The end.